Before we begin our questions and our conversation, I want to take just 30 seconds, and I want you to pretend here in the audience that you're at a concert or something else like that, and I want you to just give me a call out of the emotions that you're feeling right now, having just seen that documentary. The thoughts and emotions that are on your mind. Come on, call them out. Sad. What else? Disgust. Horrified. What else? Outrage. Greed. Curiosity about what's happened since. Yep. One more. Weird. Clueless and weird. Okay. And so then, of course, Lindsey, that I hear those words and I think, hey, musical. Don't you? Yes.
I do, yeah.
Yes. So how do we get from that? We're going to start there for a second, and then Lauren, I'll bring you in just a second. How do we get to musical?
Well, I love this movie so much, and it was so good to see it. I don't know, did I talk to Lauren here?
You can talk to Lauren here.
Well, I just love this movie so much, and I just loved watching it again tonight. I'm from Florida, and the Siegels started buying up pieces of my hometown in Cocoa Beach a few years after the documentary came out, so I became aware of it, the film, because of that, and I just felt like those characters were so larger than life in the scale of their ambition, of their project and their American dream and what they were trying to do and what they were losing. And for musicals, you're always looking for big characters that could sing, and it felt like a scale of something that could hold song. Yeah.
So, Lauren, were you able to hear from there what the audience was calling out with their words and their reactions?
No, but I heard you repeat them.
Yeah. So are those, is that what you expected?
Well, first of all, I just want to congratulate Lindsey, because my movie came out 12 years ago, and her musical that she wrote, it has been an incredible journey to kind of see their creative process. And I'm just really proud and happy for you with this coming out.
Well, let's do that for a second, shall we?
Thank you. It's amazing.
I guess the one word I did expect those words, the one word I also expected, which I didn't hear, is empathy, because I think that's the kind of dichotomy and reactions of this film that even one individual feels is kind of a mixture of Schadenfreude and empathy. Like there's a little bit of those crazy rich people, and then there's another side of like, wait, I want to have a bigger kitchen too. I want to have a 2-car garage. That's kind of part of the American dream at all levels. And I really tried in the movie, and I think in the musical, this also happens, is to see how this kind of desire for more is really part of the American dream, and in a way, an addiction that kind of takes us all down often risky and sometimes or usually unfulfilling kind of direction. And so I think that in terms of the arc of the film, that in the beginning, you don't like them and you feel all of those things. And in the end, hopefully you have a little bit of empathy. There's kind of like a little piece of Jackie in all of us. And we know that because the financial crash did not just affect rich people. In fact, the reason I started this is because I thought these were the people who would never be affected by the ups and downs of the market.
I'm going to stay with you for just a minute longer on this part, Lauren. One of the things that somebody called out in the audience, and I think to finish this discussion, I think we need to do a little bit of this. So that's what, 2011, 2012, right? We're 12 years later. Tell us a little bit about what happened after.
Yeah, so what happened after, it's funny because I hadn't seen the movie in a while. I just was able to watch the end, but he says he wants to keep the house. That is what happens. What he talked about at Christmas about buying the loans at the cheaper prices, there's basically like wheeling and dealing in a way. Rich people are sometimes able to bounce back through whatever. He didn't get all of the money of Vegas back, but they were able to bounce back. And now Westgate is, they're very wealthy again. And so I think the thing that the musical takes on, which I also kind of had to grapple with and I did a movie and a book called Generation Wealth, where I was just kind of grappling with not learning your lessons like the beauty of the ending of the movie is they learn their lessons, but actually what happens is they put those lessons aside, they get the money, they get the house, and they're still building the house in 2024. It is still not done, and it is still a work in progress. So it's really just like Sisyphus, just pushing the rock up the hill. It's like, I think that, the beauty of those kind of crashes is that we get insight, we get wisdom. And I think the ending of the documentary is they share the wisdom. They are our truth tellers. We should have been happy with less. Family is what matters. I should be happy with bunk beds, or I would be happy with bunk beds because I love my family so much. David says I should have been happy with fewer timeshares. But when the conditions change, the addiction comes back.
So Lindsey and Lauren, I don't know if you could, I'm sure you couldn't feel it in the screen, but there was this palpable wave that came off of you, Lindsey, when Lauren said, they learn their lesson, but then they don't learn their lesson. And yeah. I want to walk a line for the, maybe 60% of people in the room who haven't yet seen the musical, right? But you were like, oh, right, when Lauren said that. So talk some more about that.
Well, yeah, it's just what happened both to the Siegel family and also to the country at large, that we reach these moments of crisis where you think we're going to change and then maybe we don't. And that this dream or this thing that we're all striving for is so shiny and appealing, and it's so a part of the culture that we've all been a part of and complicit in, that it's so hard to break those, as Lauren said, addiction cycles. So I think the Siegel family is just a great microcosm for that, and is something obviously that happened in the wider culture that you would think of, certainly after the 2008 financial collapse, that it would all change, and it sort of hasn't, and the rich are still rich, if not richer, and class disparity grows, et cetera, et cetera. So it's these cycles going back, what we address in the musical, to the French Revolution, even, that you would think once your rulers are beheaded that ends that ends this cycle, but it doesn't.
One of the questions from the audience is did you need to get permission from the family to adapt this, and
we did.
Sort of, where do they stand on it?
You'd have to ask them. But we did get life rights and also documentary rights, and have had great collaborators in Lauren, and I feel like it was important to show the empathy and not to what Lauren, I think, does so beautifully in all of her work, including the movie I love so much, The Kingmaker, about Imelda Marcos, like that you find the humanity in people that are outside of what maybe that you vote differently from, or, that don't share all your political views or life views, and are reaching outside yourself to find still the humanity and what goals and things you share and where you differ. So
the moment in the documentary when you first thought it could sing.
Oh, just all of it. I think it's the house. It's that house and those small people in this big house, and that image of the house just getting bigger and bigger around these very tiny people, and that the house itself becomes this metaphor for just striving. And they didn't set out to build, as they say in both the musical and the documentary, they didn't set out to build it. It's just sort of happened because they all wanted things, and that the house, they almost can never finish this house because there's always going to be more that they want, and another room that needs adding, or a new idea. And the scale of the project, because it's so big, they finish one area and then another area gets destroyed because it wasn't finished and there was a hurricane, and it's just this unending thing that they're still trying to get.
And Lauren, your first reaction when the idea comes, somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, how about a musical version of this?" What was your first reaction?
love the idea. I should say that my producer and husband, Frank Evers, is in the audience with you guys in Boston.
Give a wave. Where is he? Where is he? Oh, there you are, back there.
Back.
And he always loved this idea of a musical. In fact, we had tried a few years before meeting this team to get it going, and just, it's not our world. We didn't know how. We didn't meet the right people. And so then in the middle of COVID, I get a call from Bill Damashki, the producer, saying he wanted to do this. And we really loved the idea. And then we had lunch with Lindsey and Michael, the director, and talked about it. It was really important to us that the musical be created with the same kind of ethos and message as the movie, that we, you know, that we have two ways of dealing with this story in our culture. And the other one is kind of the reality TV glamorization kind of, in a way, kind of idolizing the lifestyle. And so we just wanted to make sure that it was kind of the right tone. And this was just a really incredible team. And we talk so much. And, you know, a lot of times when you have the underlying material, the creators just kind of go and do your thing. Thank you very much. And Lindsey and Michael and Stephen really let me be a part of the story development process. And it was so fun and so exciting. And they're so creative and smart. And, you know, we were able to have brainstorming sessions, and there were things outside the movie that, you know, I could talk about and could find a place, and, or, you know, if I felt something was missing, it was just a really wonderful process. And I mean, I guess I kind of agree with Lindsey in a way, like, you can imagine the musical. It's like the thing that drew me in the beginning, when I thought it was going to be about this story about wealth and building this crazy dream of the house, was the way their house was kind of a microcosm of the American dream, because you had the nannies and the housekeepers from different parts of the world, the driver, the kids, the parents, and they were all this kind of crazy dysfunctional family together. Like, it was kind of a world into its own, including the animals. And so I think there was something, you know, both fantastical and metaphorical and kind of over the top, which the movie can celebrate, document, but also keep that, you know, critical angle.
So there's again, I'm constantly watching time. There's so much to get to. I want to do a quick lightning round now with just a few sort of fast questions. And we'll sort of do in the documentary, in the musical, in the documentary, in the musical. All right. In the musical, the dog's name actually is. Do we know?
We don't know, because we have only one live dog in the musical, because we could not have, no musical could contain how many dogs are in the...
So the live dog's name is?
Real life is Moomy.
Moomy. Very
which
sweet.
is sort of modeled after Mochi, which is Jackie's current dog.
Very nice, very nice. In the documentary, the animal that surprised you the most, there was some moment when an animal surprised you at some point. What was it?
Oh, the dead lizard. And I couldn't be more thrilled that there's a song dedicated to the dead lizard. And of course, the dead dogs. I was more fond of the dead dogs, because that was the thing that was really incredible. The stuffed dog in the glass, the dead dog on the piano. Those were the jaw-dropping moments for me.
Yeah,
and the dog poop. That was the star of the show. And I'm so glad it's included in the musical.
The song that most quickly wrote itself.
Victoria, Jackie's daughter, oldest daughter, kept a diary, which she called the Book of Random, and Stephen turned her diary entries into a song called the Book of Random, and it's mostly verbatim from her diary.
The moment that you were sort of following that most felt like a microcosm when you were filming it, where you were like, God, the whole story is just right here?
Well, we were there the day that they put the house up for sale. And at that point, it was about 2010. So it was a couple years after the crash. And by that point, I had documented the crash all over the world, in Dubai and Ireland and in California and Florida. And so the idea that they had to sell their home, like so many people from middle class and working class families, was just mind-blowing to me. And then to see the green pools, the dirty green pools that I had, photographed in California and other places, like I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that a billionaire had gambled everything without putting anything aside, not even their own personal home, not even money for their kids' college education.
You made choices. The story on stage consolidates some people, leaves some people out, creates sort of composite characters.
Yeah.
One person that just couldn't be represented on stage and sort of is still with you. Do you understand what I'm saying? Couldn't make it on stage, and you kind of, if you could have brought him in, you would have.
Oh, that's a good question. We've struggled to find the way to get the limousine driver into the musical. And I would still, in the future of the musical, we have a year before we go to Broadway, I still want to try to figure that out, because he's the sort of representative of the middle class. And we've sort of had him in and had him out and had him in and had him out. And he's sort of in now. And I still think that's the one to get in.
And any story that you were tracking for the documentary that didn't make it, that is on the cutting room floor, that didn't make it into the final cut of the documentary? Any person or their journey is part of the sphere of the Siegels, or is everything you learned about in there?
Yeah, I think everything I learned about is in there. I was 12 years later, I feel like I was incredibly lucky as a young filmmaker. Like every time we went, something happened. Yeah. And, when I made The Kingmaker about Imelda Marcos, that wasn't the case. I spent 100 days. There were lots of unfruitful days. I feel like every time I went to Versailles and the Siegel's house, something happened. And so I really struggled in the movie to get Jonquil and Victoria in. There were definitely, I had broadcasters, people I was working with, who were like, it's a story about David and Jackie. You can leave them behind, like they're peripheral. And I really fought for them. And I feel, very vindicated in the musical that they end up being the moral compass of the film. They end up being the heart of the film. And, of course, part of that is due to the tragedy that happened to the Siegels after the filming a few years later. But I think they are important characters, and hearing from the children is really important.
Because you laid it out that way, I will tell the audience, for those of you that don't know, Victoria died of an overdose in 2015. And I'll tell you, everybody who is here tonight, that if you or someone that you love is experiencing a mental health crisis, you can text or call 988 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, a resource that didn't exist, of course, at that time. It's only been for the last, I think, 2 years. But that's a resource that's available to you and the people that you love. And I want to go into a couple of uncomfortable places now. Kristen Chenoweth is... talk about the indomitable Molly Brown, right? She is sort of the indomitable Kristen Chenoweth, and you can't help but love her. You can't help but love her, right? And she doesn't even try not to be lovable on stage in this. And there were times, so what I did, I watched the documentary tonight, of course, but when I went to preview the musical, what I did was sat down, watched the documentary, got on the T, went to the theater, watched the musical on purpose to sort of have the whole thing in my head. I love her way better than I love Jackie Siegel. And that made me really uncomfortable, honestly, because it was like we were getting all the charisma. I'm just going to say it. I loved her way better than Jackie Siegel. It made me uncomfortable. React.
I think that's fine. I think anytime you adapt something, you're making characters and you're making character choices. And I think the choices that the character makes are still the same as the choices that Jackie Siegel makes. And you you have to fall in love with the characters that you're watching. It's why you fall in love with Walter White when you're watching Breaking Bad, but you wouldn't want to be a meth dealer.
I don't want him knocking at the door.
No, you don't want him knocking at the door. But you still have to fall in love with Tony Soprano or any of these anti-heroes. So I don't have a ethical problem with that. I think Kristen's an incredible performer, and the structure of the musical, I think, uses her charisma to lure you into thinking it's one thing and then it becomes something else as you're watching it. That's purposeful.
And she was fascinated by Jackie Siegel.
Yeah, and I think it's good to have complicated characters that you both like and do things that you don't like.
Yeah. So the other uncomfortable one is watching this in a 2024 lens. The race and equity dimensions of it just come out. I mean, it's the nannies. I mean, oh my God, and the complete unawareness of. I mean, yes, there is this empathy piece that you're talking about, and there's a staggering lack of empathy there that just sits so much in the front. And I almost hesitate to say 2012 versus 2024 because the proper pushback to that is, well, for whom is it different from 2012 to 2024? That's always been a part of the story. How do you think about that?
I mean, I don't think that's uncomfortable in the sense that I think that's the message of the film. Like, that's what this is about, is the disparities and the wealth disparities and how the kind of chasing of the dream keeps everybody kind of buying into this dream. And it's why we don't have a French Revolution, because everybody thinks that they will someday be rich, so they don't react. And I think David Siegel's, I mean, one of the things that was kind of incredible was David Siegel's business and the way that that was a mirror of their story. And the timeshare business is about selling a fantasy of luxury to people who can't afford it. And that's what, people want. And now we have much greater wealth disparities than when my parents were growing up. And so in a way, that idea of the American dream is much more of a fantasy for most people. And that's why we see so much bling, because it's kind of like the gilding, the bling is the only luxury that is reachable for many people. And so I think, that's what this story is about. And it's not about rich people. It's about how at every level we are kind of tied into this trap of wanting more. And, there's a political dimension to that too, because we see the kind of the French Revolution where people were like, no, and then we see this other world that we have, in a way leaned into more over the last 12 years.
So there are a couple of things in all of that with the two of you that, are so today. There is the French Revolution dimension is done so magnificently in the musical, the way it brings the story forward. And of course, we were talking about the fact that in the opening ceremonies for the Olympics in Paris, there was this great shock because you've got the severed head of Marie Antoinette sort of hanging in. I think Marie Antoinette's actually in the audience tonight. I think I saw her actually in the audience tonight. But you've got the severed head of Marie Antoinette up in the window, and people are like, ugh, right? And it really struck me, sort of that back and forth. Like you said, you would think maybe after a revolution, does it strike you to have a moment like that as your musical is coming out and we're hearkening all the way back again?
Yeah, this is why this is such a timeless story. I think it doesn't matter that it was made in 2012. I do think I get on my soapbox about this a little bit, but I do think the moment that we're at in theater right now is that in our efforts, which are much needed efforts to be inclusive and progressive, we are also putting forward a lot of plays that are idealized versions of society on stage. This is not that. This is like putting a problem on stage. This is, Moliere did this, but this is not new, but it's just not in trend necessarily right now. So it'll be interesting to see what audiences react to that, because it is not we are not putting the idealized version of society on stage. We're saying, like, let's look at this as a problem, a personal problem, a cultural problem. Yeah.
The other thing, and I'll do this super fast. We are in a moment here in the Commonwealth where in healthcare we're having a crisis because we're having some hospitals close and a bunch of other hospitals be sold because the company that owned the hospitals basically owned the land and the buildings, but then to take more money out of them, sold the land, mortgaged out the land and the buildings and took the money out, right? And so that's called steward healthcare, and that's why Kearney Hospital is closing, and that's why 7 were up for auction. And now we have this moment where we see David Siegel, who owned the land, owned the building, and did the exact same thing, and then finds himself in that situation after he extracted that value to realize that profit somewhere else. It is quite striking to have that, aughts story playing out here in a way that affects every person who's vulnerable and needs health care in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This just doesn't just play out in a house, Lauren, and this is part of the work that you do, is how these decisions affect wider ecosystems of people.
I mean, that was what was interesting to me about this story is it was a big version of what so many people were going through. And I think what led to the crash was that the banks were making free money available to everybody. So they took it because we're fed these kind of stories about how this will make us happy. And then everybody used their houses as piggy banks. And then when things changed, they lost their homes. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the sad thing is that we didn't learn from it and now it's happening again. But I think the importance of the story, and I really just want to acknowledge Lindsey for taking on this story that does show a problem, because I think what they've done in making a musical that's entertaining and fun and over the top and foot stomping and makes you want to sing along, but at the same time drives home really hard lessons, really tough situations, and hopefully the audience will kind of get sucked into, the fun of it and then come home with something really to think about.
So with that in mind, with our last 30 seconds, the greatest moment of joy for you in creating this on stage?
Oh, God, there's been so many. Getting to work with, when you're a writer and you adapt things, especially, you just get to pull people into your orbit that you wouldn't necessarily normally get to do. And I feel like as a fan of Lauren's, getting to sort of pull her into my artistic world and pull in Jackie Siegel and Stephen Schwartz and Kristen Chenoweth and Michael Arden and getting to sort of just be in the room with these people thinking about these things, I think that's why you want to be a writer. And so there was a moment where Kristen and Stephen and Michael, the director, we all flew to Orlando, Florida, which is the airport I flew in and out of my whole life because I live an hour from Orlando where I grew up. And just having them sort of so close to my hometown, touring the Westgate property, thinking about the film that I'd been a fan of for so many years. It's just this cross section of so many things in my life. So that would be it.
That's a good one. And for you, Lauren?
I think getting to work with this incredible team, like for Stephen Schwartz to write the music, and then I'm hearing lines from the film and the music, and also just to see a work kind of that you made in, kind of in a very small scale in a way while we were making it, never even knowing if it would kind of see the light of the day, and to see it translate into another medium and to be kind of so broad and, it's creatively, it's super exciting. And then just to also see the way they brought in so many themes. I think at one point I gave Stephen a copy of my book, Generation Wealth. And then the next time I went to the presentation, there was a chemical peel. And, there's so many themes in the work that are also part of my work and are not even in the Queen of Versailles, like the self-esteem crisis of girls, the difficulty of women of aging, the kind of currency of beauty, the desire to get plastic surgery, the currency of wealth. There are just so many. The song "Pretty Winds" is just like an idea that has been in my work for like 30 years. I did a story for the New York Times Magazine about what power you have in the world when you're beautiful, and how that's leveraged. And so I'm just so excited by the way they brought to life, all of these kind of ideas for in a very digestible way and in a very fun and entertaining way. And I hope people.
Well, Lauren Greenfield, Lindsey Ferrentino, thank you so much for your work and for being here tonight.
Give it up again for Lauren Greenfield and Lindsey Ferrentino, Tiziana Dearing for moderating this amazing conversation, and to all of you, thank you so much for coming. Coming up at CitySpace.